So we're now joined by Pamela. She's the founder of Glucose SOS. And if you don't already know about the brand from the UK, it's an amazing brand. And I'm sure Pam will explain that a little bit later on. But what was your inspiration behind Glucose SOS?
Yeah, I'll tell you the elevator pitch. My two daughters, which are in my virtual background. So Taylor was diagnosed at the age of 3. She's 29. And Emmy was diagnosed at the age of 12, and she's now 27. So I watched the girls have life-threatening, terrifying low blood sugar episodes. And Taylor is kind of a more brittle diabetic. She had life-threatening seizures, almost died in my arms multiple times. She's been in, DKA twice, and one time in St. Mary's in London. Very scary situation. But the girls would turn to juice and candy. They didn't like glucose tabs, so they would turn to Starburst to treat their low blood sugar. And I noticed, because that's a different sugar, that's fructose and sucrose, that has to be converted into glucose, because glucose feeds your brain. So because of that conversion, it delays bringing your blood sugar up. They would overtreat the condition, then their blood sugar would spike. So I'm like, what can I give them that works really super fast, that won't spike their blood sugar, that's convenient to carry around with them if they're sick and they're throwing up? Hopefully I can have something that will be absorbed into the bloodstream, that they won't throw up, so I won't end up in the ER, with a glucose drip. So one day we were skiing, and the barometric pressure and everything affects y'all's blood sugar levels. And we had just eaten breakfast, and both the girls were at the bottom of the gondola. I feel low. And I'm like, well, dang, now we got to, take everything off the boots, go, force feed them, because they weren't even hungry.
Yeah.
And it's heartbreaking. And I looked up and I was like, oh my God, how am I going to make sure my daughters make it safely back to me? And I started I guess it was an angel spoke to me or something. They're like, what about the BC powder and stand back powder? And I'm like, that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to create an instant dissolved glucose powder. It has to be, 100% natural and pure. And that's kind of how my journey began. That's how I invented Glucose SOS.
And obviously, what inspired with the flavors of the Glucose SOS? Because there's 4 flavors, isn't there?
Yes, green apple, fruit medley, sweet and tangy, and kiwi strawberry. I don't know. I just, I wanted to give everybody a little opportunity to, whatever their favorite flavor was, to give them an option. And the sweet and tangy doesn't have any flavor at all. It's just really pure dextrose with the malic and citric acids, which give it the tang. And a lot of people that can't stomach, I actually had a lady the other day call me, and she has a 24-hour nurse because she's so low all the time, and she just can't handle any kind of flavors. So she was telling me how sweet and tangy has just saved her life. She takes teaspoons of it at a time before she gets in the shower, when she gets out of the shower. She had an eating disorder, and she used to eat. She weighed 300 pounds, and now she weighs 125, and she eats like 12 mini meals a day. But to keep her blood sugar up, she takes little teaspoons of sweet and tangy all day. So just to give people a choice of what they would like.
And you mentioned there about your 2 daughters being type 1 diabetics. What was their diagnosis story like? Let's touch on that.
Oh God, please don't make me cry. I get teary-eyed. It's been so long, but I still it's so painful as a parent and a caregiver to have this happen. And I was working in corporate America in Atlanta at the time at MCI, and um, and Taylor was the first one diagnosed at 3. Was going, and she was in a preschool, a daycare, and I noticed, like, within a week, she had stayed home for a few days. It all happened so quickly. She just started wetting the couch, and I remember saying something to her. I'll never forgive myself. And I was like, I brought a diaper out that her younger sister had, and I was like, you are a big girl. Like, this is what babies wear, diapers. And I had no idea, because diabetes didn't run in my family. And so I picked Taylor up from school, and I drove her all the way across town to the doctor. And I told him her symptoms. She's really thirsty and had like foam in her mouth, and she's wetting the bed. And he came out to me and he said, your daughter has type 1 diabetes. And I'm like, what? And he says, put her in the car. Now it's about an hour away from the children's hospital. Her blood sugar was well over in the thousands. Put her in the car, get her to Scottish Rite emergency ASAP. And Daniel, I didn't know she was going to die on me in the car. I had no idea. I had thought at the time, oh, so she's going to have a shot. That's all I thought. So we were in the hospital for 2 weeks, and I was told it was a grueling 2 weeks that she would never be able to walk barefoot on the sand again. They had all of these things that she couldn't do, all these limitations all day. That's what I was told. And I just wanted to scream and go, she's going to live a normal life. Quit telling me all these things. I mean, it's enough to make me just go crazy. And so Taylor was just the sweetest kid. She would go next door. We would wheel them around in hospitals in the little red wagon. And she would take her, because they, prick their fingers. Back in the day, that's what they did. And her fingers were bleeding, and they always had their Band-Aids, and she would wrap little Band-Aids up and give it to her friend next door, slide it underneath her door, and color the toilet paper. And then it was, again, back then, the insulin used to peak at certain times. So I was force feeding this kid, breakfast at 7, snack at 9:45, lunch at 12, snack at 3:45, dinner at 6, and another snack at 8:45. And she would say, Mom, I can't eat anymore. I just don't want to eat, Mom. And I'm like, you have to, Taylor. And I took a piece of bread and I took the edges off of it because it's visual, right? And I squeezed it into the tiniest ball I could possibly squeeze it in, because it was her visual perception of what she had to do to get that 15 grams in her. And I called it the bread bomb. All you have to do, Taylor, is eat this bread bomb. Three bites. Mommy will eat one with you. That's what we did. And then when Emily came along, one day I was having a dinner party, and I was like cutting up, my veggies and making my charcuterie board. And, Emily comes inside and she has, scraped both her knees. They were bleeding. And she said, Mommy, I just feel weird. I don't feel good at all. She fell while playing basketball. And I went, oh crap. So I took the blood sugar meter and I pricked her finger, and it went round and round and round. And I just put the knife down and I said, excuse me, Emily, I need you to go upstairs and pack a bag. We're going to the hospital. You have type 1 diabetes. And I remember one of the people there said, don't be so pessimistic. You don't know that. And I'm like, let's go. So we went to the hospital, and because I was a champ, I only had to stay. We got to leave that night.
Diagnosis stories were always kind of traumatic, as you mentioned there, but you did really well there to explain that story. And I'm guessing, obviously, as a parent, I'm not a parent, so I don't know, but especially with me I was diagnosed at 18 months old. So I don't really remember much of my diagnosis.
18 months old?
18 months old when I was diagnosed.
Oh, I just got chills. All over. I'm not kidding you. That's heartbreaking.
18 months old when I was diagnosed, and I don't remember much of it. All I remember is, like you mentioned, was wetting diapers quite a lot. Mum and Dad was like, why do you keep needing new diapers? why are you going through this many? I was just drinking loads of milk constantly and crying a lot of the time as well. And I was actually misdiagnosed first time when I first went to GP on holiday. So he thought it was a water infection because I was drinking tap water, and they have different chemicals in the water. And then when I come home, I still wasn't right. Mum and Dad weren't happy. So they then took me to the doctors, and I was straight into the hospital that day. I don't remember what my actual glucose levels was, but I remember then in hospital. So I've been diagnosed since 18 months old. I'm now 28, 29 in June this year. So it's crazy because you see kids now, especially you don't see many toddlers, but you see them on Instagram with the parents on there now. But it's still not spoken about as much, even in the younger age. It's very rare you see toddlers especially bringing it out there online. And it's always upsetting to see that, because you're thinking, I remember those days, especially when you're a kid and you've got to give them the shots. And a lot of the times for parents, that can be difficult because a lot of kids don't understand they need their insulin, they need the shots to stay alive. And I remember still to this day, mum and dad having to literally restrain me to do my insulin shots. And them memories don't go away. They always stay there. But now when you get older, you kind of think they were doing it for a reason.
Yeah, I almost feel like as a parent, I almost feel like I have like post-traumatic stress syndrome. The guilt, like why couldn't it be me? Why them? And why I would, I'd give my life to cure them. Somebody said, I'm going to take you right now if you'll cure them, cure all of you. And I think the thing that really got me so much was, I don't know why I'm crying so much lately. It's just such an emotional topic that as a parent, you really have to put this tough shell on, and you almost have to become just so almost cold in dealing with the situation because you have all these fears. And if you face those fears, you couldn't even survive. And you watch this child be so strong, and all of you are. And there's 24/7, 365, and my girls never complained. And yeah, I restrained them and whatever, but I would, after I'd see them have a seizure, I literally felt like I couldn't breathe. I was messed up for days because I couldn't get it out of my head. And I would try, I didn't have really anyone to talk to about it. So I'm a single mom. And you can't explain what you've seen. And you can't explain the near death situation. And if you try to explain it to someone, they look at you like, oh, it's no big deal. She just gets shots every day. And, even Taylor, the things the doctors didn't tell me about was, when she was little, I had to take her to a birthday party and she took a hot bath. So she took a little extra time playing in the hot bathtub. So the hot water makes your body absorb insulin more quickly. When we got to the birthday party, she fell out on the floor. And I start screaming and I'm running, give me juice. I'm like, everybody's just standing there staring at me like this lady is really overreacting. Because they don't understand. They don't walk in our shoes. So it's painful. And I can only imagine as a baby what your parents went through. It's,
As you mentioned there, kids can't really communicate as well as teenagers or the older people. So it is harder, especially trying to diagnose a child compared to teenagers and more older, because the kids can't communicate. And I think that is one of the hardest things to come around, because you can overlook the signs of diabetes can be so many misguided, because a lot of them can lead to other things like frequent urination can be a water infection. So it's all these different things. So I think that's why there's so much different misdiagnosis around type 1.
Which is really sad. I mean, it's death if there's a misdiagnosis. It's
definitely.
terrible.
And it's scary. It's like you mentioned there about the hot water. And this was an episode that happened a few months ago now, a few years ago. I went to see a show because I was a massive Disney fan. And I went to see Disney on Ice with my sister. And I wasn't well. This day I went to this show and I still went. I thought, I'm still going to go because I've paid money. I'm not going to waste money and not go and see a show. So I still went, even though I shouldn't have done, because I didn't have any breakfast. And my sister was like, have you got your insulin? I went, no, I'm all right. I don't need insulin. I'm totally fine because I've not eaten and I don't think I'll be eating all day. So if I don't need food, I don't need my insulin because I'm not eating. It'll send me low. So it's just like, oh, okay then. So I went to the show. I still wasn't feeling well. I was being sick, so I couldn't eat. And I went in the show, my sister's like, are you okay? Because I was sweating at the time. I was showing signs of I was going low. And I was like, I'm totally fine. I'm okay. Because I think as well, when you're type 1, sometimes you're a bit stubborn and you think you know your body more. And even though your people, your friends and all that are around you, your family, so they know the signs, you're like, no, I'm okay. And I remember that. I don't remember the show. I blacked out completely. And I woke up in the backstage in the A&E room, well, the first aid room. And that was after, obviously, I had like glucogel and dextro is what they brought me round. And I was like, I can't believe how fast he came round from having the dextro gel, because as soon as they give me that, I come round in about 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't remember that show because of that happening, because I didn't have hypo awareness.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
do you get angry when you get low like that? Do you get combative and angry?
I don't get angry when I'm low. That's more when I'm high.
Yeah.
I think. I'm more, when I'm low, I'm more sweaty, shaky. So like to like jelly with me at the minute.
Yeah, it's so scary. One time, so I live at Wrightsville Beach. So I live one floor up. There's stairs going up to my, and my daughter Taylor had come over. She wanted to go, she was going to church. And she was going to leave. She came over to do something. And then she's like, okay, Mom, I'll see you later. And as a mom, we have that intuition. Like there's a sixth sense. And it's like, I didn't hear her leave. Wonder if anything, I heard all of a sudden like an elephant or a bull in a china shop hitting the walls, coming up the stairs, flailing around. I opened the door, face flooding with sweat, seizing. And that's the moment that I had to administer glucose SOS to her. And I'm going to tell you, it was very different than the times before. You never get used to it. It's scary. It's the same bit of fear you feel all over and over and over again. But the fact that I could just grab glucose SOS, tap the powder in her mouth, and she came out of it. I was so thankful that day. Just so thankful.
And it was like, actually, going back on about your glucose SOS, I got some the other day, and we ordered it from Diabetes Supply in the UK.
Yeah.
I've been looking at the product for months. So I've seen people on about it, I'm like, I'll try it soon. And I thought, no, I'm going to try it now. And I got some, when you mentioned that about your daughter then, yesterday it was, my blood was 2.6. And I was in my bed, I woke up, because I went to sleep. I thought, I'm having an afternoon sleep, I'm going to relax a bit. And I went to sleep, woke up, and I thought, I can't talk. Why can't I talk? I couldn't literally lift my mouth open. I was like, what am I? And I checked, it was 2.6. I'm like, I'm going to have some glucose SOS because I can open my mouth to put that in. But I'm like, I'll try that. And then about 5-10 minutes after, I was then, I rang my sister. I was like, did I phone you about 5 minutes? I'm totally confused. Because I was thinking I phoned her. And I went low, so I wasn't speaking to her. But she was like, no, you've not phoned me. I was like, I swear I've just been on the phone to you. So it's weird.
It is.
When you go a certain level, you can kind of get confusion as well. So I think that's a sign I have as well, is when I'm low is confusion.
You know, I think it was God's way of letting me know as a mom what she felt like. Guys, one day, I guess I had eaten too many Haribo gummies. I can't eat them anymore. But I did. I ate a lot, and I don't really eat pretty healthy, and I don't really drink soft drinks and stuff. But apparently, I had overloaded my system with carbs, and I think my islet cells were just overproducing insulin, trying to keep up because it was not a normal thing for me. So Taylor happened to be here, my oldest daughter, and I was sweating, confused, nauseous, everything. And she goes, Mommy, you don't look good. You look really pale and white. And I was like, check my blood sugar. I was 40. So, I mean, I then had experienced that severe hypoglycemia, not as bad as Taylor and Emily have, but I knew, and that even broke my heart even more. Like now now I understand even more the suffering that they go through. And so.
Because as you mentioned there was no, when I was diagnosed, there was no diabetes in my family. So there was nothing related within the family. I think that's another one. A lot of people put it down, if it's in the family, you're going to get it, you might not. And it's more people who are not, you can get it within the family, not saying you can't, but more people who you speak to, they've not had family history of type 1.
Do you know how you get type 1?
No.
Okay. So we're all predisposed to bad genes. And these genes can go back to generation that you can't even track the genes. So obviously it was a genetic predisposition. and you come in contact with a virus. And because of that predisposition, genetic predisposition, and the combination of coming in contact with this virus, which they haven't figured out what virus that is. They had originally thought the hand, mouth, foot virus is what we called it. But basically what happens is you've got your T cells in your body are the little Pac-Mans that destroy all the foreign antibodies. Like when you're sick, helps you get rid of, feel better. Tells your B cells, who basically supports your immune system, that your islet cells, which are the insulin producing cells in your pancreas, are a foreign antibody. So your T cells tell your B cells to destroy your islet cells. And you can never, so that's what happens. And you can never produce insulin ever again. Now, the cure for diabetes is if you can't do an islet cell transplant in the pancreas, because the same thing would happen over and over again. So you have to encapsulate the islet cells somewhere else and trick your body into releasing insulin outside of the pancreas. So with that being said, I've been following research for a long time. Dr. Henry Daniel started out at the University of Central Florida. He's now at Penn State. He's from India. And I'm going to preface this by saying, no one wants a cure. They make too much money off the devices. And Dr. Henry Daniel has cured over 300 and something species of animals of type 1 diabetes. And what he did, he infused islet cells on lettuce leaves. Because in India, it's very poor. So they need to use, inexpensive methods of treating massive amounts of people. So they infused these islet cells on the lettuce leaves, and they turned that into a capsule. And once the mice digested the capsule, the bacteria in the intestines broke down that capsule and released insulin into the bloodstream. And they were cured within 2 weeks of oral delivery.
That's cool. And another thing, what would you give a message to caregivers about how to care for type 1 diabetics and help them along the journey?
Treat them normally, give them a lot of support, let them have what they want to. Everything is great within reason. I think if you withhold stuff from them, it makes them want it even more. And I wanted my girls to feel normal and just succeed. So it's giving them the tools of knowledge and understanding the technology going on now, which is wonderful with the Dexcoms and the looping and all kinds of things. And I understand in the UK, there's a problem on everyone can get the Dexcoms, and that makes me sad. But it's just, you've got to be strong. And I try, although I cried a lot after talking to you. Maybe I've been withholding these tears for a long time. I don't cry hardly at all. But it's withholding those feelings from your child to not let them see you being weak and afraid, but giving them the strength to know that they're going to be fine and they're going to be able to live a normal life.
Because that's something that's always misconcepted in the type 1 diabetes community as well, is you've got to change so much, but you don't have to change anything really. As long as you're on the right, correct amount of insulin, you're totally fine to do whatever you want. You can still work out, you still go to the gym, you can still eat the same foods. It's just getting the right, correct insulin into your body at the same time.
Yeah. I mean, one changes that we made kind of like to our diets. I love to cook, and I would cook 3 meals a day for them. But our dinner, we would sit around the table, and I really just quit buying juice. So I would have, organic milk, but they would have water for dinner. And then we would have fresh fruit. We always had fresh fruit. And then we would have a protein, a vegetable, and carbs, just, we didn't eat a lot of carbs. It was like rice or whatever, but it was a normal meal. It was just kind of well balanced like that. And they really enjoyed the fruit. And I think fruit, you get the fiber with it. So it's so much better than drinking a bunch of juice.
Well, definitely that. And you mentioned there about eating more healthy. I think that's a positive change for anyone who's type 1. But yeah, we can still eat cake, we can still eat chocolate the same as anyone else. We always say one of the misconceptions, if you're diabetic, you can't eat cake, you can't on your birthday, you can't have that. You definitely can. It just
Yeah.
requires more insulin to cover that, what you've eaten.
Yeah.
And especially with my diabetes, I don't carb count. So a lot of now, I think that's more newish with carb counting. I'm on like a set dose of insulin per meal. And people are like, but you don't eat the same meal every day. So how can you require the same amount of insulin every day? It's like, I'm on a set dose. So quite recently what I've done, I've been trying, I'm guesstimating my insulin dose, thinking of a meal, looking at the carbs myself. And yeah, there's times where I'm going low and it's like, right, I need to do this, I need to do that. And then sometimes, I think with the Libras and the Dexcoms, I think people can read into the data a little bit too much, and that's something that is out there because there's messages out there where you should be flatlining as a diabetic, but there's nothing as a flatline even for a non-diabetic. After meals you do peak, that's normal. And there's always them misconceptions as well as your graphs on this and that, or your data might be showing the upward arrow and the trends, and you might think, I'm 8.2, I'm going rapidly up, I need to inject insulin. What I've learned is wait half an hour, 15 minutes, check it again, because sometimes you might act on it, but then you can shoot it back down because your body's sorting itself out. So a lot of type 1s can read into it a little bit too much, I think, as well with the Dexcom. It is good. And as well, I think it's cool that people who are on pump as well now can actually loop the doses with the Dexcom, which I think is going to be the way forward.
Yeah, it's been a lifesaver for as a mom. That's a security blanket for me, because with looping, the girls are on the Tandem T Slim, and so now when Taylor's blood sugar is going high, or Emily's, if both the girls' blood sugar are going high, then it gives them boluses extra insulin for them. And the beauty of it, it does the reverse. If they're going low, it suspends the insulin. So thankfully they have better control, and they don't care about all the tubing and everything else. They just like having that, that better control. Obviously, it's the best thing for you.
And then you mentioned there as well about the Dexcom within the UK. That story is true, and it is sad, because I think technology is going forward within diabetes management, definitely. But again, that episode I had in the MEN arena watching that show, I was recommending the Libra, which is similar to the Dexcom, where you just scan your mobile phone, it gives you the reader, but it's a flash glucose monitor compared to a continuous glucose monitor. And I went to my doctor and I said, can I have the Libra? One of the ambulance people who came to the room said a Libra would be beneficial because I'm not having signs that I'm going low, I'm just going low and there's no signs. And it was a straight no, because at the time they didn't consider me to be eligible because of the criteria. So I was like, right, okay. So and this was a time, because obviously I left high school and I went straight into a chef's job. So I never had any, so from leaving school at 16, I went straight into work. So I never really had downtime to myself. It was the minute I left school, straight into a job, which was massive change, because I'm used to going to school, I love school. And then straight into a job, it was like total different world. It was a different change altogether. And again, high stress. So that was interfering with my diabetes. So I stopped. And then as soon as I got the job, I stopped testing blood sugars. I just thought, I'm not chasing numbers anymore. So I stopped checking blood sugar. And it was only last year, and I started to do my own travel agency business. And I thought, my money needs to go on something else in my health. I'm not going to get the Libra, but maybe if I self-fund it, maybe put a bit of pressure on my doctors to say, look, this is working. They might reconsider their decision. So I ended up packing in my travel business, what I had for a few months in lockdown, and I started to self-fund the Freestyle Libra myself, because it's openly on the market, so anyone can get it. And I bought it, and I thought, right, I'm going to start now looking at my blood sugars. And then from that day, from day one, from when I started it in maybe it was August when I got it, that's where then I started to transform my diabetes management because of the Libra. And I was like, if I would have had that from when I first asked, I could have been a totally different person now. And it's like, that was the hardest part. And I think that's the same with the Dexcom. I think the Dexcom's more, a lot of females get it, especially when they're pregnant. So they have the stricter control, where if you just want it, it's harder to get the Dexcom. It is hard to get the Libra as well. And it's so much harder to get an insulin pump as well over here.
Well, I was talking to, do you know Sammy?
I do.
You know Sammy?
She's talking actually on my podcast on Wednesday.
I have some little friends over in the UK that I was on a live with Sammy. Well, I just joined in. Of course, my dog jumped up right in front of my phone. It took over the whole screen. I'm like, well, I had my dog on the screen and she had her cat over there. But we talked about this. She was the one that was telling me about this, situation in the UK. And I was so surprised how many people were commenting about their A1C levels. And, well, mine's not good, or this one isn't good. And I have this one, but it could be better. And it made me feel really sad because all of you guys are doing a great job. I mean, you have something, a disease that no one, they look at you and they think you're fine. They have no idea what you guys go through and the challenges. Like I said, 24/7, 365. So with that being said, it makes you guys feel guilty that you're not doing 100% of a good job. And I say every day that you get up and you take one step forward, you're doing a damn hell of a great job. And I just want you to know that people like me, like my mom, as a mom, a caregiver, that I think people with diabetes are the most special heroes in the world and just so positive. And I just want you to know that everybody looking in like me, I know what you guys go through, and I'm really proud of all of you.
Well, it's definite because, like, you mentioned there, people look at the grades and the charts. It's like sometimes I'm like, one day I can get 100% in range. It's like, I feel amazing, feel great. The next day you can wake up and it's like 42, 50. It's like, what's gone wrong today? What can I tweak tomorrow? It's like, now, yesterday I got 91% in target range. And I was like, I'm going to get 100 today. This was before I went to bed last night. And then today I'm 75% in range because last night, again, naturally, our blood sugar's lower at night between midnight and 4 a.m. because that's when our body's lowering blood pressure and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And blood sugars go down in the night. So I always stay up till 1, 2 o'clock to do my last scan. And I was like 7.8. I thought, right, what I'll do, I'll go sleep now. I'm going to be fine. Woke up this morning at 8 o'clock. I went low at 2:30. I was like, if I would have stayed up a bit longer, I might have not gone low. I might have been able to treat that. And I'm like, it's natural, it's normal, it's fine. There's no harm done. But when that first was happening, it was like, well, if I don't wake up, I could die in the night. I live on my own because I used to live with my parents before. And then mum and dad passed away April 2 years ago. So I found mum's body, so that was heartbreaking for me at the time. And then 6 weeks after my dad passed away. So then I had a massive change. Then starts with my diabetes. I was like, don't want to be diabetic, resenting it even more. Because like, what do I have now? I've not got my parents, I've not got anything. And then it was like, when I moved in my own flat, which I'm in now, it's like sometimes when I'm low, I'm like, I could die. No one's going to be here apart from my sister. But then my sister don't live near me. She lives across the road. But if I didn't phone her, it could be hours. And I get sometimes I'm like to her, I'm like, make sure I'm all right, phone me up or something. If I don't answer, make sure you come round because I don't know how long I'd be because no one lives with me. And that's one of my concerns more when I go low. It's like, what happens if I don't wake up at the night time? So that's one of my biggest worries now.
It is so scary. That's very scary. I'll share something with you briefly of what happened. It's a spiritual thing. And I usually don't even really talk about it, but because we're on this subject. So I worked in corporate America. And at the time, I only had Taylor that had type 1. And she would have the terrifying low blood sugars in the middle of the night. So I would sleep with the girls to a certain amount of time. And at the time, then their dad would tap me on the shoulder and I'd go sleep in the girls' room, another room, just because I had insomnia and I worried about him all night. And I just tried to get some rest so I could work. And then he would sleep with them the rest of the night. So we always had someone with Taylor. And anyway, I had a lady that stayed home with Taylor during the day when I was working. And I called to ask Taylor how she was doing, how was her blood sugar. And she told me that she was playing with God in the bathroom. And I said, what do you mean you're playing with God? And immediately I thought, is she going to die? This is, what I was thinking. And she said, Mommy, I don't want to talk about it. And I said, what does God look like? She said, he's the man in the white suit. And I said, but I don't want to talk about it anymore, Mom. So we were going home to take Alonia home, who was a caregiver, stayed home with them. And I asked Taylor why God came to visit her. She said, he gave me a horn and I don't want to talk about it. So about a couple weeks after that, I was lying in the other bed and I heard this loud sound. It was a series of beeps. It was so loud. I thought my neighbors could hear it. And something just told me to go check on Taylor. So I picked her up and treated her. She was dangerously low, below 30. And I had her sitting up on the countertop, shoving juice in her mouth and, treating her, put her back to bed. And I asked everyone, did you hear anything? I'm like, no. 2 weeks later, it happened again. And I thought I was going crazy, that I was hallucinating because I obviously was so sleep deprived. And I was like, I'm not getting up. She had a normal blood sugar. When I went to bed, I'm literally just losing my mind. Well, first time I ever heard a voice that told me your child needs you. And I jumped up and went in there near life-threatening seizure level again. So Taylor, who is now in her almost 4 years old, I reiterated this story to her. And guess what she said to me? Duh, Mommy. God gave me a horn to blow and I was blowing it. So this day, for the entire life with my girls, if they have a low blood sugar, I'll sit straight up in bed and wake up.
That's another cool story because you don't even think about them kind of stories really, do you, spiritually? And they do actually happen. If you believe in that, it does happen. I won't say it doesn't because it does. And I do believe in spirituality and stuff like that. So that is so cool that happens.
Well, Daniel, have you ever had a dream wake you up?
I have.
All right. Then what is that? That's your angels looking after you.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is. So that should give you some comfort, knowing that there are angels that look after us. And that you waking up and having that nightmare, that dream wake you up, there's a reason for that.
And the last thing before we wrap up the interview, what would be your future ambitions for Glucose SOS in the future?
Yep. I've just created I have a pet product line, Glucose SOS for pets with diabetes. And then I have my third product that I reached out to a manufacturer to start R&D on this 2.5 years ago. And I heard no, and 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 no for 2.5 years. So they finally told me yes. The very first ever dissolvable glucose tab. It's not even this size. It's smaller than this. It's almost like a powder. You put it in your mouth and the second it hits your saliva, it turns into a powder. See it? Completely dissolves. See it?
Yeah. So
we have cherry pineapple and banana mango peach. So that's something it's given different tools. Like I want to give the ultimate tool to treating hypoglycemia. And there's two things that have to be consistent. Both have to be pre-measured. So it has to be a very controlled approach to treating the condition. And they have to be 100% natural. And I also want them to dissolve and be absorbed in the buccal mucosa and in the bloodstream, because that's the fastest way to bring your blood sugars up.
And that's another cool way. I'm especially interested in the mango banana flavor. That sounds.
Oh, I had 2 packages. I had 2 of these. So I ate them. I just couldn't, because they're so fun to eat. Because you think of a tab should be this crunchy, bulky, whatever, and it's not. It's like yeast and bread. It's kind of what's happening in this melt, this glucose melt. And I got in the shower and I'm like, woo, I feel like I'm buzzing a little bit.
Because that's, like I mentioned before, it is so easy to treat hypoglycemias with, like, they always say jelly babies, jelly beans, stuff like that. It's so easy to then think, I've had 5, but I quite like the taste of these, you'll have more. And then 20 minutes later, you're like through the roof, like 15, 30 minimals. And it's like, what have I done? And then you've got to recorrect that. Whereas with your product, the Glucose SOS, it's a controlled approach. And to be honest, since I've been on it, I don't go much more above probably 100 in your milligrams per deciliter. So it's only just right to let you through the hypos and get food. And you won't come crashing down because it's sustainable. And I like as well, it doesn't spike you straight away. It's a slow, gradual rise, whereas some can just go shoot, go so fast. And that's what I think is a really good product with your brand. And that's the reason why I want you to come on to our podcast today. And lastly, the last question, I think this is going to be quite cool. Where can people buy? I've never heard of Glucose SOS. Where can people buy it, either in the US or in Europe?
Yeah, well, in the US, we're in most of the major retailers. I won't list them all because there's a list of them. Of course, we're on Amazon, my site, www.glucosesos.com. In the UK, with funkypumpers.com and Diabetic Supply Company UK, David Smith and Mike O'Brien, they're both great. And on Amazon in the UK. And then we just got our VAT number for Italy. So I'm very excited. So we're actually, my goal is to move to all the Amazon platforms internationally.
And is any ambitions to maybe come into, like, to be sold in supermarkets and grocery stores within the UK in the future?
Yes, I would love that, but I don't have access to a distributor. So I really would like it, and I'd like to see my products in all the stores in the UK. You know, similar to, like, I'm in the pharmacy section of, like, the Kroger's and HEB and Myers and Harris Teeter and Publix. I'm in the pharmacy. So anywhere that would have a pharmacy, I would love, but I need a distributor. So I guess I need to fly over to the UK and visit you.
Definitely, because I think it's going to be such a good product as well. Like we mentioned, there's always glucose and dextro tablets, but I think it's a product that is needed because the way it works is fantastic and it's great, and it'd be a new great addition, I think.
You know, I have a premonition that my glucose melt, I feel like it's going to cannibalize the tablet market.
Definitely, I can see it. I can see it when you're just in that demonstration. You can see people are going to go mad over it.
Yeah, it is. It's going to, hey, maybe it'll be once in my life it can go viral. Wouldn't that be great? You know what, Mike? I tell you, honestly, if I have one dream in my life, that's to build this brand, to make a difference in people's lives, which I already have. I'm so thankful at all the direct messages I get on social media thanking me for saving their life. And they always say the same thing. My blood sugar went up fast and it didn't spike. So it's been a learning curve for me to educate people on why they use glucose in lieu of other things and why there's the 15 grams. So I'm thankful for that. But I tell you what, I dream one day that I'm going to get some funding, enough money, make enough money in my company to take Dr. Henry Daniel and say, hey, let's get some of these capsules made, do what we need to do and cure type 1. That would be my biggest dream of my entire life.
Oh, definitely. And it would be cool if there was a cure, but like you mentioned, we live in hope every day there's going to be a cure, but the pharmaceutical companies are making too much. And that's something that I am kind of passionate about, because I joined the T1 international movement with Insulin for All. Because again, going back to 4 years ago now, I went to Florida in the USA, and I wasn't well again. It's getting a recurrence, it's not well. And we went actually in June. So Florida in June is quite humid and hot.
Yeah.
So we went to have breakfast and I couldn't eat again. I actually had some Fruit Loops because I love Fruit Loops in the US. We don't have them over here. So I had some Fruit Loops and I was like, don't feel well. I was like, we're going to go shopping today. And my sister was like, no, we can't go shopping. You don't feel well. So I went back to my room and I think it was my glucose, I think it was 32 at the time. So it was low. My sister was like, well, what do you want me to do? I was like, you'll have to go and get me some sugary drinks. I don't know, it's the USA, so I don't know what the high sugar drinks are. Just go and ask the woman what. So she come back with like Gatorade, but the full sugar Gatorade, chocolate and candy bars. And I was eating it, but I couldn't eat it because I was being sick and it was going the other way as well. So I was like, oh, don't know what's going on here. This is like, I have to get the ambulance. I was like, whatever you do not call the ambulance. Because I know the crazy price in the US of where it's going to be in treatment. And I was like, I'm in trouble, but don't call the ambulance. She was like, but your blood's not going up. So you need help. I was like, oh, okay, then you're going to have to get the ambulance. I'm going to have to go in. And the same day, my UK doctor found out something was wrong with me. So my UK doctor was trying to get in touch with me in case I need to go in hospital, which was weird. And in the end, the ambulance come, but I was walking. I was like, I'm fine, totally fine. I'm okay now. My bloods are fine. They checked it, and it was 50 something. So still lower, like the 150. There's like, you can come in with us or you can stay. It's up to you. I was like, I think I'm better off getting checked over. Even though I know the bill's going to be crazy, I'm going to have to get checked. And I got checked out. I got admitted first time, come out and was like, still don't feel well. My stomach's still really iffy and really bad pains. Got out, taxi come. As a taxi pulled up, I was sick again. I went, right, I'm going back in hospital. So I admitted then for the second time. So I had 2 hospital admissions in Florida. And I think that was, the bill came back, I think it was like 18,000.
What? Is that your first time visiting the state of Florida? You go to the hospital?
Yeah.
Okay, that's the first time my daughter Taylor visited London. She was in St. Mary's in ICU.
Yeah. And it's crazy because the state, like I said to one of my other interviews the other day to Zach and his mum, I was saying to them, it was because they're from Florida and Palm Beach. And I was like, I love Florida. I said, it doesn't put me off. I said, because I like it. I said, but it's worrying because like I was insured. But if I didn't have insurance, how would I afford that bill?
That's so outrageous. $18,000.
But why it was that much? No, they did 2 admissions.
Yeah, but gosh, I mean,
because I was like, what the crazy thing is, if you go in the UK hospitals, you're in hospital for about 3-5 days max, usually. When I was over there in the States, I was only over there a night. Well, not even a night, a day. So I was in and out fairly fast. And that's my sister. You get treated faster, so maybe that's why it's more expensive. Because you're in and out, and it's worth the money because they get you better. They don't make you wait out. Like sometimes in the UK, it can be ages before you see doctors and all that kind of stuff. I've seen in America, you get treated there and you're out the same day. And I'm like, maybe that's why it's there, because you're getting faster treatment compared to the UK.
Gosh.
I said, but it's crazy amounts what people pay. And that is something that why. And then he had to have medication. And I said to my sister was like, I said, you have to go to Walgreens to get my medication. I was like, here's $200. My sister's like, $200, you won't need that much for tablets. I was like, no, you will do. Because I had family as well who live in Canada. And a lot of the time they couldn't afford their medication. And just like, okay, I'll take it. And she come back, she went, you were right, it was $190 for your tablets, 2 lots of medication. And just like, I can't believe it. I said, well, I had an idea. Because you remember my mum mentioning my uncles and all that in Canada, that he spends a lot of money on medication. It's just crazy.
Wow.
I said, I can't even imagine how much insulin is in America. I know I see people who has insurance.
I'll tell you, there was
type 1, and insulin costs can be through the roof as well.
It is. I would get their supplies. So I would get a 3-month supply times 2. And I didn't have my business at the time. So I wasn't, it was a struggle. to get their supplies. And it's maddening because that patent was originally sold for $1. That Dr. Banting and Dr. Best, all they wanted to do was to save lives. And now Big Pharma has taken over. That's a whole other subject, but price gouging, it just shouldn't be that way at all.
No. And that's interesting. You just mentioned about Dr. Banting. In a few more weeks, we're interviewing his third cousin.
Really?
Well.
That's super cool.
And I connected with her a few weeks ago because I watched a video with somebody else and I was like, oh, that'll be so cool to get her on, and we're going to interview her in a few more weeks on a podcast show, which I'm looking forward to doing that one.
That is so cool.
You mentioned with insulin, it was first out there to be obviously to save lives, but then since it's changed, obviously different now, it's more analog insulin compared to being generic. Well, it's more generic now than what it used to be. It used to be cloudy insulin, didn't it? I always remember like it used to be like white and cloudy, where now it's more see-through. You don't have the cloudy insulin as much.
Yeah, Taylor was on that. She was on that.
Because my insulin rate started off on Humalog, I think it was. And then I went over to Mixtard 30, which is Novomix, which is like the cloud when you've got to shake up and you see that lumps. I say lumps are fat, but it's not fat. But it looks like floaty bits in it, a liquid. And then I went over to Novo Rapid and Levemir. And then I changed from Levemir and went on to Sheo. And now I'm on to Sheo. Because a few weeks ago I was like, I'm getting insulin bubbles in me to Sheo. And I was like, my blood's going high in the night because there's bubbles. And I actually rung the pharmacy company up and I went, I'm getting bubbles in the insulin. I said, there shouldn't be bubbles. I said, it's still shooting out. I said, so it's fine. I said, but my blood's
just
going
dump
down.
it. Dump it.
I was doing all that and it was making dead tiny ones.
Yeah.
It was making tiny ones. I was like, it's multiplying. So then I was never even bothered about insulin bubbles or whatever. And I was like, this can't be right because that's why I'm going high, my bloods. So now I was ringing my nurse like, can I change my insulin? I'm losing my faith with this brand. I said, because they actually phoned me up and said they'll do a sample to send it back. And then the next day it was a phone call back from the manufacturer saying, it's fine if there's bubbles in the insulin, it won't do no harm. I'm like, it's harming me and my bloods are going high in the night.
Right. It's doing harm.
It's like, it's not harming me, no, but it's making bloods go high in the night. It's not sustaining me.
Yeah.
And if I give myself more of it and then there's no bubbles, I'll end up going hypo in the night. It's like, it doesn't harm, no, but it could harm in the future. And it's like, it's crazy, especially when you're on insulin, you've got to change doses yourself. Because as you mentioned, being a caregiver, as a parent, you're not just a parent, you're like a doctor, you're a nurse, you're everything in one go. Yeah. And you don't have a degree. We don't have a degree in it to do it. Even diabetics don't have a degree in medical field. We're just thrown in the deep end, right? You can go out, you can do it. You give me your insulin pen.
But then we know more than, most doctors and nurses. In fact, I would find taking the girls, now I've got 2 of them and we're going to doctor's appointments. You might as well just say we're going to be there for 3 hours each time. And the nurses sometimes would ask me the dumbest questions. And I was like, they don't, I guess because the point is, regardless of what kind of education you have, living it is the best tool to really, truly understand this disease. You have to live it. And more than medical professionals because you have to, because it's your body, it's your life.
100%. And that's something I've always actually said, and especially my sister is one of the biggest ones to say it. Like I said to her today, I was like, I've had the dietitian phoning me up today. They're like, do this, do that. I'm like, I'm already doing all this. And even she said today, you know more than what I know. And I'm like, but I'm still going low, so I think I need to treat me insulin. My sister's like, phone up your diabetic nurse up and say, I was like, well, all they'll tell me is reduce it by 2 units. I already know what they're going to say. I said, and I don't want to waste their time. Because that's what you feel like you're doing. Because sometimes, like a few weeks ago, I was always on the phone to him. And you get that impression like, you're mithering him, just leave it alone, you do it yourself. But then you're like, when you get the results, it's like, who gets the praise? Is it you or is it them? When you've done all the work yourself and the hard work, it's like, who actually gets the praise? You will get the praise, but who actually gets the recommendation for it? which is the hardest part about it.
Yeah.
So thank you for joining us today.
Daniel, you are just a lovely person. And you are, I just know by looking at your smile on your face and how you are, and you're just such a happy soul, and you're going to be very successful, and you are just a wonderful human being. And I'm just so glad I met you. And, this is the best part about my job is I get to interface with beautiful people like you all the time. And it's just immediate love and respect for one another. And that's a great feeling. So you're doing great. And thank you for everything you're doing in the diabetes community. It's amazing. I'm very proud of you, and I'm honored to know you.
Thank you.